Hey guys, this is Nitesh, and I did something really stupid. This is the second time I'm recording this, because I accidentally overwrote the first time I tried making this video. But the Grand Tournament was released last week, and I started implementing some of the cards. And I figured it might be nice to actually, take a look at what I was working on. So, I'm gonna start with one that is entirely possible because of the Grand Tournament. Paladin Inspire. So the Paladin's hero power, you get a 1/1 Silver Hand Recruit. So it's the kind of thing that you can count on regularly helping to some degree. So then it's just a matter of how I want to build on from that. So I like to start out with the Lowly Squire if I can, because turn 1, Lowly Squire. Turn 2, use the hero power, and immediately get that Inspire benefit. Now, Dragonhawk Rider, I just wanted another threat in the 3 mana spot. You know, I didn't want to wait too late to really get stuff moving. But Wind Fury, anytime I make a Silverhand Recruit, it's pretty helpful. And I've also got Warhorse Trainer and Silverhand Regent, both of which make the hero power just that much more threatening. Silverhand Regent, I get extra Silverhand Recruits. Warhorse Trainer, I get stronger recruits. I worked in True Silver Champion and Blessing of Kings just because sometimes I need to attack into something big. You know, just one of the things that happens in this game. So, True Silver Champion, I get a little healing in, and I can take out a bigger thing. Blessing of Kings, I'm making so many Silverhand Recruits. All of a sudden, one of them's a huge threat. Consecration, because, yeah, sometimes you just need to wipe the field. Now, Maiden of the Lake, I'm a little unsure about, because, you know, yeah, cheaper hero power, but really in this deck, the price of the hero power isn't that big a deal, because I make that price well worth it. But, if nothing else, that's a 6 damage removal magnet. Tournament Medic, you know, I tend to let some attacks through, just so I can actually build up. Tournament Medic, I can actually get back some of that health. Mookless Champion is huge in this. Inspire, all of a sudden these little tiny wimpy Silverhand Recruits actually start growing into something. Quality Raider, I actually might be taking this out. And the biggest reason is that anytime I've tried testing this, I've wound up with a huge amount of creatures. So why have Quality Raider when I could go with Frostwolf Warlord and get something huge immediately? The Recruiter, I haven't actually drawn him in a game. He's probably going to be good, although I'm not really sure how much that 2/2 Squire costs. But, you know, it'll be good to actually have something that's a sizable enough body and can help me build up the ranks. Kodo Rider has been a huge, you know, he's been great in this deck, because 3/5 is kinda tough to deal with sometimes, and this makes it pretty reliably. Now, other than that, I've got Emperor Thorician because the higher mana cost stuff can be a little much. So, get Thorician out here and cut down on the mana costs. Stormwind Champion because if you're playing in Magic, this would be White Weenie. If you're playing White Weenie, you need Anthem effects. And this is a pretty good one on a pretty nice sized creature. And I've got Muster for Battle, just an instant army. And then next turn I can pretty easily throw down Warhorse Trainer. Boom. So far this deck's been doing pretty good. Like, it's kind of a matter of it either goes off or I go up against a really removal heavy deck and nothing happens. Speaking of hit or miss decks, this is the Rogue Raiding Party. Now the basic premise of this is just really fast aggro with pirates. So I've got the Buccaneer. This is actually a pretty good turn 1 play because it either baits out all the early removal or I can hit for 4 next turn. South Sea Deckhand's another. This is actually not as much of a good starter. This has actually been best used like turn 3 because it's a really cheap creature. Turn 3 I've probably still got my 1/2 dagger and comes out with charge. Now Bloodsail Raider, this is honestly, it's a card that starts trying to fill the late game because it's alright enough as a 2-mana 3/3, but really later on when I have an Assassin's Blade and it's a 2-mana 5/3, then it starts pulling its weight a little heavier. Defias Ringleader, this is actually turn 1 if I go second, or turn 3 I found is the best time to play this, because turn 1 if I go second, coin, Defias Ringleader, I have 4 damage on the field turn 1. Turn 3, I've got a weapon, South Sea Deckhand, Defias Ringleader, 6 damage on the field, one of those creatures has haste. Now Dread Corsair, this is the one taunt in this deck. And basically, beyond that, I basically have, the Assassin's Blade, a bigger weapon, kill spell, light damage. This is the closest I actually have to a board wipe. Unfortunately, Rogue just doesn't really have a lot of that. Backstab is a pretty good thing to combo into, but more damage. Put this on a fairly weak creature. Use this for damage. Leper Gnome doesn't really fit in as well with the theme of the deck, but it's still a pretty nice early play, and this is a deck where early plays are huge. I have 1 sprint, and I'm gonna be honest, I kinda think I might need more. It's just, when I hit when I hit turn 6, I start running out of stuff I can do. By that point, I've probably emptied my hand. And the thing is, I've had a bunch of people who've conceded the game before that point. And I've also had games where they let the game continue, and I just had nothing. I've got sap just to, just so I can make people waste a turn on this big expensive creature. Okay, 2 mana, I get an extra turn. So, really the biggest weakness in this deck is just that late game point. The fact that once I hit the higher mana cards, I'm usually emptying my hand every turn. And the problem is sometimes I actually need, a few of a card. The thing is, there's not a lot of actual card advantage in this deck. Fan of Knives doesn't really count because it's just a cantrip. Shiv, it's just a cantrip. The one thing that actually generates card advantage is Sprint, and Sprint is so expensive. But I am kind of debating actually working that in, because I'm gonna be honest, I very rarely actually use the Shiv. It's just, if I need it, I need something heavier. If I don't need it, then I just don't need it. I end up using it just so I can draw a different card. Now this deck, it either creates a huge enough advantage early on that I can get an early concession, or the game goes on longer and it just kind of runs out of steam. Now, out of the 4 new decks, I actually kind of like this one, which I don't really like a lot of Druid decks. This is Druid Xanatos. It's basically designed around, no matter what I draw, it being useful. So, this one is actually mostly pre-Grand Tournament. I did put in Living Roots, just because, aside from this, I have no turn 1 plays. But, this is generally the sort of theme. Choose one, 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 choose one. I basically planned this out so that it's like, okay, I drew my card, and doesn't really matter what it is, it's in some way useful. So, I had a game earlier where I was having a bit of trouble actually getting creatures I could play. So, turn 1, I was going second, so I started out with a Noyatron. Doesn't really fit the theme, but a Taunt and Divine Shield, it's a bit tough to ignore. Turn 2, Living Roots. I got the 2 saplings, and I ended up baiting the person into wasting his board wipe. The next turn, Power of the Wild, I get the 3/2 Panther, and I still had this on the field. He had to waste another board wipe. Now this, early on in the game, you're more likely to come across low toughness creatures, so boom, just kill it immediately, and I get an extra card. Later on in the game, that 3 damage might be all it takes to push something over the edge. So, okay, 3 damage, take out your creature. Wherever you draw it in the game, it's gonna be useful. Anodized Robocub. When it comes time to play this, okay, the opponent's got a good number of creatures on the field. +1 health. Or, if it's like turn 2 and they don't have much on the field, okay, so I think I want to go aggressive here. +1 attack. Direwolf Alpha, I'm actually not so sure about this in this deck. It's like, it was fine before, but I think I'm gonna take one of him out for another Living Roots. You know, keep things going with the theme, but being able to just give something an extra attack, that's just generally useful. Mark of Nature. In the early game, maybe you need to just build up a wall to protect yourself. Okay, give the minion +4 health and taunt. Or maybe it's a late game and you need to attack into something and kill it. Give it +4 attack. Savage Roar, I basically just hold on to until I'm ready to end the game. Just, okay, you think you can actually survive the next turn? All my stuff gets +2 attack. So that pushes it right over the edge. Grove Tender, I basically just, depending on what the opponent needs, I pick the opposite. So like if they've got a bunch of expensive stuff in their hand, which I can assume based on like if they've got a bunch of stuff in their hand and they're not playing it, okay, everyone gets a card. Or if they're running out of cards in their hand, okay, everyone can have a mana crystal. Now, Swipe is just generally something a Druid deck should have. You know, targeted 4 damage, 1 damage to everything else. That's just generally useful. Keeper of the Grove, this is... I've actually got a lot of silencing in this deck. You know, if I need to get rid of some buffs or some abilities, throw silence at it. If I need to just kill something small, 2 damage. Spellbreaker, decent enough body with silence built in. Druid of the Claw, little on the expensive side, but what happens sometimes is sometimes I get to this point and I don't have a huge board presence. But there's also sometimes where the other players self-destructed their field and just they were counting on me not being able to take advantage of it. And I can. Now Starfire, just because sometimes a huge thing's gonna come up, and a huge thing that can come up. You know, basically, in the late game, you just need something. Just something that can block. And this'll do it. Now this deck generally does pretty well. It's like, if I end up losing, it's to something that's a little, you know, a little much to plan for. And then finally we've got Traitor Mage. Now this one, I'm gonna be honest, I haven't been able to make it work. Here's the general thought that I had. Mage's hero power, deal 1 damage. You can aim that at your own creatures. So, Amani Berserker, 2/3 for 2 mana. Next turn, I throw a fireball at it. It's a 5/2 for 2 mana. Raging Worgen, 4/2 with Wind Fury. Tauren Warrior, 5/2 with Taunt. Grim Patron, 2 mana, add more creatures to the field. Gurubashi Berserker, this will get huge if I just keep throwing fireballs at it. And I've also got Kvaldir Raider, just because, you know, I'll be throwing fireballs with my hero power, so this will get pretty big. Now, because I'm damaging my own creatures, I am putting them at risk, so I have Flesh-Eating Ghoul here, just to try and take advantage of even if my stuff's dying. And Mookless Champion, this is the kind of Inspire ability that can actually make up for the fact that I'm throwing fireballs at my own stuff. The thing is, and of course, aside from that, I've got extra 2 damage, 4 damage to an enemy minion, 3 damage, 8 damage to a minion. You know, basically just kind of trying to control and stop things from getting too out of hand. The problem is, what happens more often than anything else is that I end up devoting so much time to having to build up all of this that I can't actually throw fireballs and actually make the most out of any of it. It's like, I'm sure there's just some way I can make it a bit easier. Like I was thinking Maiden of the Lake, but, you know, the 4 mana point is usually about where things start falling apart. You know, I'm trying to figure out ways I can, like, slow down the other player while still keeping these enrage threats. Because what usually happens is, you know, Raging Worgen. Okay, we don't want to just almost kill this, so just 3 damage to it outright. Or, you know, Warriors actually got a huge advantage over this. Okay, you want to damage your own creature? Fine. Execute. Just kill it. You know, I'm just... There's something I'm missing about how to make this deck work, and I can't quite figure out what it is. But anyway, that's the last of the decks that have really benefited from the Grand Tournament. This thing before Grand Tournament just wasn't even working. But having Lowly Squire, Tournament Attendee, and Flamelands in case of anything huge has actually helped it, you know, do a bit better than it was. It's still not doing that great, but it's better than it was. So anyway, that's going to be all for now. Over the next few days, I'm actually going to be doing some videos of actually putting those decks to work. So stay tuned for that. This is Nitesh. Keep enjoying the videos, and subscribe to help the channel and see more.